Oppenheimer was sharpening his knives when Akasha entered his room. She laid down on his bed next to him, with her belly facing the ceiling, making her talk with her face upside down to him.
What you doing?
He looked at her, already bored with her attention-seeking games.
I am training an elephant for the Queen of England's birthday party. Do you think I can make him do a backflip?
I thought you were sharpening your knives.
If you know, then why do you ask?
Because I'm bored, Opie. Jolene is busy with her tasks and I'm done with mine, so I thought I could help you.
I don't think so. Why don't you go help her?
Oh, she's so boring and you are so much fun. Explosive fun.
I am, aren't I? But still, I don't want your kitty claws mudding my operation.
Why would you say that? My kitty claws are very much clean.
Akasha, I am a one-man show. Besides, I don't want you telling on me to Ivan like last time. My genius needs freedom to soar. It can't be shackled by his religious dogma.
I take back what I said. You are no fun. You never let me play with you.
Oh my, I'm hurt. See this? Can you hear it?
He rubbed his thumb and the index finger together.
What?
It's the smallest violin in the world, playing just for you.
Douchebag!
She stood up, knocking his tools on the floor. Oppenheimer stood up with anger in his face and a sharp knife in his hand. They stared off each other, the atmosphere teeming with the prospect of violence erupting any second when someone interrupted.
Akasha, I can't believe the news from the court. Come, you must tell me all about it. Honestly, these clowns should be rebranded as the King's Circus. It would suit them much better.
It was Antoinette at the door. Akasha looked at her with a smile full of glee and left the room, sticking her tongue out to Oppenheimer, who just laughed, very satisfied with himself. In the city of Dreadford, where the lines between right and wrong blur like shadows in the night, there was a casino called Crimson Dice near the docks. The Midnight Fiends got out of Oliver's SUV. They were received by the gritty streets under a torrential downpour. Neon signs cast eerie glows and buzzing sounds that echoed on the rain-slicked pavement as the city's denizens scurried for cover. The five Nosferatu walked through the parking lot in silence, each one lost in their own haunting thoughts. Daniel felt guilt devouring his soul for having helped DuPont against the Ebony Dagger. At the time, he did not want to disappoint the Frenchman. It all made sense before, but now, away from him and his influence, it felt more and more wrong. He looked at Eloise. They have not spoken privately since, and he was sickened by the thought of her knowing what he had done. Eloise, in her turn, was irritated. To see such a flagrant display of corruption of the council was unbearable. Buying votes with favors shamelessly in front of everybody, it was the last straw. She would help in Don Vittorio's case, but after that, she would put her skills at the disposal of the rebellion. It was time for a new king, maybe a queen. Yelena didn't want to wear the crown, and that is exactly why she should. Oliver was worried. He knew he had done the right thing by siding with the council. The city needed change, but it didn't need bloodshed. He looked at Tom. They had just got past their fight because of Daniel, and already they were set apart because of this affair. Could their crew survive these cracks? Tom noticed Oliver looking at him and looked back. The businessman broke eye contact and the big man grunted. How could Oliver be so smart and so stupid at the same time? Can't he notice that Gomez was killed in the same fashion House Dracul was trying to kill him? For secrets, whatever Oliver was looking into, it was something the old dragon did not want unearthed. And even after Daniel was almost blown into pieces, even after DuPont accused Spectre of trying to kill the Midnight Fiends with a fake bomb using them as bait for the monsters in the sewers, the businessman still could not see the truth and took sides with the council. What a puppet. Julio, though, was plagued by Daniel's betrayal. How could he, after all they have gone through? He knew they would have to discuss this sooner or later. The blood covenant weighed heavily in his mind. He knew the whole situation had put his family in danger. Agnes, Van Arden, Christina. Now it was his responsibility to uncover what happened and maybe deliver consequences. They would cross that bridge after Vittorio's investigation. They reached the entrance of the Crimson Dice and asked to speak with Giacomo, a longtime familiar of Vittorio's, responsible for the establishment. After the proper confirmations, the Midnight Fiends were allowed entrance in the secluded parts of the casino, where Nosferatu and familiars took care of their affairs. Giacomo was a big and fat guy, covered in gold chains and a black suit that smelled of cologne. A lot more than needed. He greeted them with a big smile and handshakes, but he kissed Daniel in both cheeks with deference.
The Don told me you are his godson, Mr. Reed. Anything you need, just ask. You need money? Take it. You need blood? Have it. You need someone to disappear? Let me know and consider it done. Rest easy. Our family is your family.
Thank you, Giacomo, but it is not necessary. We are here just to ask some questions about Javier Chavez. He used to work here, did he not?
He did, Mr. Reed. Cost us money and blood. Un pezzo di merda.
Yes, the Don told us it had something to do with one Anthony Marino.
Cazzo, povero Antonio. Yes, I tried to dissuade the Don, but he has a temper. When it crossed his mind that Tony was stealing money from us, there was nothing that could be done. Tony went to sleep with the fishes, but the embezzling continued. That's when we found out about Javier. He was skimming from the top of Tony's deliveries after the money was counted. That's why he took the fall.
And when you found out, what happened to him?
We didn't. One of the boys caught him and he beat the guy with a billiard ball and ran. He's been missing ever since. We tried everything. Orlok spies, Dracul soldiers, Leviathan police. The guy is a ghost.
Maybe a Strix private detective can help.
Giacomo laughed, wagging his index finger at Daniel.
Now I see why the Don likes you. You are a cocky son of a bitch.
I try to be as good as I am cocky.
I bet. The Don also asked me to show you this.
The man brought a small TV and a video cassette player. He inserted a tape and pressed play. It was a security tape of the heist. 3 people wearing Halloween masks took the place by assault. The Midnight Fiends saw them getting the diamond from the safe and saw one of the men shooting an old lady.
That one is Javier, I am sure.
Why would you say that?
Because of the way he handles the weapon. No trigger safety. Look here. He always fancied himself a gangster. When he uses the pistol, he does it sideways.
Daniel looked at the screen intently, but not at the pistol. A few distorted pixels at the side of the hood of one of the perps caught his attention.
Did Victorio have any bad dealings with a woman?
Why do you ask?
Here, this one, it's a woman. Can you see her hair coming out of the mask under the hood?
I think I can, but the quality of the video is not great for me to be sure.
I am pretty sure the way she walks, body language, and body type. I'd put money on it.
Cocky, but maybe you are right. We had a couple working for us selling contraband cigarettes. Bada bing bada boom, the guy decides to use our money to buy drugs and resell it without our knowledge. He is busted and loses the product, and now he owes us money with interest. 20 points. Of course, they can't pay. Victorio feels merciful and tells them to pick which one will pay in blood and leaves a gun on the table. Before he exits the room, she kills her fiancé dead.
Vicious. Do you know her name?
Stephanie Banks.
Daniel contemplated the situation. Clearly, Javier had dealings with Victorio, and there was a high chance that the woman in the video could be Stephanie Banks.
So there are 3.
No, wait a minute.
Giacomo stopped the tape and took it off. He picked up a brown envelope, and from inside he took another tape.
The guys from Dupont delivered it today. It's from the Chevalier.
The fat man inserted the second tape. It was surveillance video from a French restaurant. The same 3 thugs took the place by storm, but now there were 4.
This guy is not in the first video.
Maybe got into the group at a later time?
Maybe. What did they steal this time?
Mr. Corsa's eternity.
They all looked at each other. Don Vittorio was right. The tower was cutting the hands of the King's Council, and now the Don and Father Michael were the last targets.
They are evolving. First they steal and now contract hits? On vampires? How did they escape the Chevalier?
We don't know. Jean-Luc was not keen on telling us. Trade secrets.
What do you think we should do?
We should go to the jewelry store.
They departed from the Crimson Dice and cruised the streets to the Eternal Elegance jewelry store. On the way, Oliver made a few phone calls and discovered the real owner, a Strix Nosferatu called Albert Bay. They made contact, and the vampire agreed to meet them at the store. When they arrived, Oliver parked the car and they all exited the vehicle. Daniel observed the place around him. It was mostly commercial stores in this block. Fashion, sunglasses, brand-name coffee shops. They met the owner in front of the store and the Nosferatu took them to a private room.
Thank you. Finally, someone came to investigate this.
We are the first to investigate the robbery?
Yes. Bartholomew told me this is council business, and it is above his pay grade, and the council simply ignores my pleas. I swear, sometimes I think Yelena is right.
A thick silence covered the room, and Albert felt it become very small.
Don't worry. Let's focus on the matter at hand.
Daniel gave side glances to his companions. Oliver and Julio felt very uncomfortable, but Tom and Eloise had a little smile in the corner of their lips when they looked back.
So how long did the heist take?
2 minutes, maybe 3. You saw the tape. They knew everything. Everything. This was no amateur job. Months of intelligence gathering. Every nook and cranny. Protocols, password time change, who they needed to access the vault at the right time. It is insane. This place was designed by G-Max Security. Even the getaway car was parked in a blind spot of my cameras outside.
A getaway car. That's why there were 3 here and 4 in the Chevalier.
Still, how could they escape the Chevalier without a getaway car?
Because they didn't need one.
Jean-Luc is an Orlok.
Yes. He certainly has an emergency exit that connects to the sewers.
They knew everything about the security in both places. Okay, but how does this help us find them?
It helps us know who they are and how they think. Certainly they have been brought into the blood by the tower. The heist was late afternoon. There was no Nosferatu security. Maybe a test? Now the attack on the Chevalier was at night because they needed to get course.
And they could not do it as mortals.
So our targets are for Nosferatu buildings from the tower.
Most probably, but we still don't have confirmation on any of their identities, just hunches.
Julio felt uncomfortable talking to Daniel, and the detective noticed.
The news clipping of the heist mentioned a crash with a police cruiser. Can you show us where it was?
Yes, it was right down the street.
They headed on foot to an intersection with a gas station. Daniel went in and talked to the clerk, exuding his supernatural charm as he flashed a badge in a quick movement. The clerk immediately obeyed Daniel, and they called on his companions to accompany them to the back of the store, where they were given access to the security footage. The clerk excused himself and went back to the front of the store, leaving them alone.
Since when do you have a badge?
Always had. It's useful for private detectives.
Impersonating a police officer is a felony, Daniel.
I'm already impersonating a living person, Oliver. How worse can it get?
Here, the crash.
They all paid attention. The tape was black and white, very grainy. It was hard to discern anything. Daniel concentrated on it and called on the power of his blood and the eagle. Each frame of the video seemed to pass in slow motion. Finally, he caught a single frame where Leon's face appeared clear as day.
Gotcha.
They bagged the tape and left. All of the suspects were criminals, so it was safe to assume they had priors. As they cruised the streets, they called Caroline, asking to use the police department database to look for the suspects. The Duchess gave them authorization since this was a matter of vital importance to the King's Council. As soon as they arrived at the police headquarters, they were escorted to a small room where they could do their work privately without calling unwanted attention to themselves. After a while sifting through hundreds of criminal files, they found it.
Leon Driver, former Leon Marino, aka Speed Demon. Grand theft auto, grand larceny, armed robbery, assault, reckless endangerment.
Quite the rep sheet. Known associates? Anthony Marino?
It's his brother.
So, 2 of the others, Javier and Stephanie, were former associates of Vittorio's organization. That means that the tower is actively recruiting people at the margins of the court, weaponizing mortal associates that had enough knowledge to help, but not enough to be missed.
It's possible that all 4 were part of Vittorio's organization, or close enough.
People with an axe to grind.
Daniel searched the database and found Stephanie Banks, contraband, smuggling, drug trafficking, armed robbery. Known associates, Richard Morris, Giacomo Rossi, Anthony Marino. He searched for Richard Morris. Case number JQXBTWYA 738878, homicide unsolved, and case number HQX-MER 973778, homicide unsolved. Daniel looked at his associates.
He's a victim in the first and a suspect in the latter.
Daniel double-clicked on the latter.
It's a homicide in county jail, William Morning.
Check his known associates.
Giacomo Rossi, Anthony Marino, and Wade Morning.
This Wade, is he a relative?
He is William's son.
So let me get this straight. Javier stole from Victorio and the blame fell onto Anthony, who is Leon Driver's brother, and Stephanie Banks's fiancé is a suspect in the homicide of William Morning, who is Wade's father.
It's them for sure. It cannot be a coincidence. There is too much synchronicity here.
I agree, but who would be mad enough to gather these people into the same group? It's a goddamn time bomb.
Who indeed?
What do you propose we do?
The stone. We go after the stone.
How? I've talked to every appraiser in the city. No one has tried to sell it.
You need to get your mind in the gutter once in a while, Oliver.
What do you mean? Who do you have in mind?
The collector.
Oliver rested his chin on his hand in a pensive manner as he nodded in agreement. The Midnight Fiends once again hit the streets and went to Marcus Tullius Tunnel. When they advanced through the sewers, they were stopped by a rat group and promptly declared they had business with the collector. Messages were sent through the radios and soon they were allowed to continue. They arrived near the antechamber and the collector was already there, smiling and waiting for them.
My friends, I am so happy to receive your call. Come, let's talk.
We need a private place for this matter, Collector.
Don't worry, my office is perfectly secure.
Let's hope. These days, nowhere seems to be safe.
The collector raised an eyebrow in curiosity and took them inside. When they were all comfortable, he locked the doors and turned to the Midnight Fiends.
So, what is this matter about lack of security?
We are sure you heard, but Mr. Corse does not walk among us any longer.
Yes, terrible business this is, but are you the ones investigating? I thought Bartholomew was on the case.
He is. We are working in a more private capacity.
What do you mean?
The Eternal Elegance jewelry store was robbed. You wouldn't know anything about it, would you?
The collector tried to loosen his tie. He was clearly nervous.
Well, sure. I did hear about it.
He walked to his chair, sat down and bit a rat.
You're working for Don Vittorio, I presume?
We are.
I might have heard about the whereabouts of the stone.
We imagined that, since Oliver has talked to every appraiser in the city and no one has heard of it.
But I had nothing to do with it. He came here and offered it to me, and I bought it. Of course, I knew it was Vittorio's since the stone is one of a kind, but I intended to return it, in exchange for a small favor. Maybe not so small since I used my own gold.
So you have it?
I do, but I tell you I had nothing to do with the robbery.
We know. We are after the culprits. Who sold you?
A nobody from House Orlock. We call him Lice. He found it in the sewers. I thought it was suspicious, but I have my ways to tell if someone is lying, and he wasn't.
So he just stumbled upon it in the sewers?
That's the story.
How lucky.
I'm telling you, Mr. Magician, why someone would steal a $30 million diamond to throw it away is beyond my understanding, but that is the truth.
Daniel rubbed his chin, thinking about the possibilities.
Give it to us.
Of course.
The Orlock went to the back of his office where he had the stone. Noises of locks, contraptions and a safe could be heard, and every once in a while the collector's head popped into view to make sure no one was spying on what he was doing. After a moment he returned with the stone in his hands.
You will put on a good word for me, won't you?
He said before giving the stone.
Sure, but you owe us a favor.
He took it and immediately displaced his senses to the past. He saw the robbery, the car chase, the reunion, the stories of Leon, Javier, Stephanie and Wade, and finally how Oppenheimer threw the stone through the window and how Lice stumbled into it in the sewers.
I know where we might find them.
In another part of town, Wade, Leon, Stephanie and Javier were at the table waiting for Oppenheimer's next instructions. Everything has been going perfectly. They took out Vector and Corse, and now they just needed to take care of Father Michael and Don Vittorio. Although they were eager to finally deliver the final blow on the mobster, Leon and Wade thought it would be more prudent to go after the priest. However, Javier and Stephanie were having none of it.
He's a Strix. They are weak and it would be better practice. Victorio is a Leviathan. I heard the fat bastard is suspiciously fast and can bend metal with ease.
I can't believe you are even considering. Vittorio is the reason we got into this.
Yo man, she's right. Let's finish that bastard and be done with him. I can't wait to give him a piece of my mind.
You are thinking with your liver. We should approach this in a more cautious fashion.
Cautious, my...
Oh, we got ourselves a heated debate.
They all got quiet.
Please continue. I'd like to hear your opinions about my plan. No? Are you all shy now? No feedbacks, pushbacks? This is a modern enterprise. Ownership, teamwork, and research are the core values of this business.
I have an opinion.
I was being sarcastic. This is my plan, my group, my task. You don't have a say. You listen and obey. Is that understood? I am the conductor. You are the orchestra. I say jump. You say how high. Is it clear? You are just props to be used in my grandiose scheme.
They stood in silence.
Excellent. Now that we have this out of the way, we have two things to discuss. First, you need a name for this little posse. Something cool and edgy, like a supervillain group name. Right now, you just sound like a bunch of carrion eaters munching on a dead horse. Make me proud.
They looked at each other without understanding very well what he was talking about.
You mean like a gang name?
Perfect, Wade. Exactly. A gang name. Now, second, I've decided who is the next target. And it is... Don Victorio.
Javier and Stephanie were clearly satisfied with the decision, but Leon and Wade exchanged worried glances.
See, I may be tough, but I mean well. Consider this my gift to you.
So what's the plan?
I thought I was clear. You stay here and I will bring Victorio to you as a gift.
He started to giggle and finally burst out laughing hysterically, and without another word he left and his laughter echoed through the abandoned halls of the building. The Midnight Fiends roamed through the cold streets of Dreadford in silent anxiety. There was no guarantee the targets were still using the place, but what if they did? Could Daniel and his companions defeat them? It was the first time they would face off against another crew of vampires. Were they up to the test? The eagle inside Daniel kept warning this was a trap, but there was no turning back now. All they could do was spring it. As they approached their destination, they made the call to Victorio to update him about the progress and give him the address they had discovered. He seemed pleased and eager to have the 4 culprits in his hands. As the SUV parked in front of the abandoned building, Daniel felt a sensation of déjà vu that made a chill run up his spine. He looked at his companions, and they all seemed calm. Did they feel nervous as well, or were they confident? No sweat, no breathing, nothing. Their bodies would not show any turmoil inside. They were dead like himself. 5 dead bodies, yet still walking. He decided to put on a brave face, and using his heightened senses, he could feel the presence of a group inside.
They are here.
They looked at each other, and now Daniel could see the apprehension in their eyes.
Are you ready?
They all nodded in agreement.
Let's move.
The Midnight Fiends took the first steps into the building. The door opened with a creak. The place was dark and had a strong odor of mold. They could hear the sound of a leak somewhere. They moved silently through the broken concrete that formed the stairs to the second store of the building. Voices could be heard coming from somewhere. Eloise took the point lead and signaled for silence. Julio tightened his grip on his cane. Oliver had his shotgun at the ready. Daniel had his stake in hands and Tom cracked his knuckles and neck, psyching himself. Eloise counted with her fingers. 1, 2, 3. They erupted inside the room in coordination. Eloise in the front with her fists closed. Right behind followed Tom, Oliver pointing his shotgun and Daniel with his stake in hand. Julio came in the back with a spell ready to blow. Wade, Leon, Stephanie and Javier stood up immediately, all drawing shotguns on the Midnight Fiends.
In the name of the king and his court, surrender now!
The vampires from the tower burst out laughing. They wore their Halloween costumes in preparation for Vittorio's arrival, but did not have the time to put on the masks.
How about no? Your king and your laws mean nothing to us, court scum.
My fists beg to differ.
I'd like to see you try.
She cracked her knuckles and Wade simply smiled in return.
You can't escape. We have backup on the way.
Good, because you're gonna need it.
Are you sure about that? The numbers are clearly in our favor.
How nice! He can count, little brother. So cute.
Cleon and Daniel took a moment to measure each other. The eagle and the raven were ready to strike.
You should come with us. We can help you.
I don't need your help.
In a weird way, they felt kinship.
These people you surround yourself with are bad for you. They will get you destroyed.
I could say the same to you.
In another life, they could have been friends, but now they hated each other with passion.
Come on, little brother. Time's passing by and they got backup on the way.
Getting nervous.
Anxious. To finish you off.
Javier reached for Oliver's shotgun with his mind, ripped it from his grasp and shot Julio. The magician fell back against the wall, hurting, and responded back by setting Javier's clothes on fire with a wave of his cane. Stephanie shot at Tom, but Eloise jumped in front, easily absorbing the hit. Tom responded by charging against Wade. The Leviathan shot at the Orlok, but it did not deter the attack. Tom tackled Wade with violence against a wall that succumbed beneath the strength of the blow. Wade broke through the wall, landing in another room and stood up. Immediately, they started to trade punches against each other. Daniel moved like an eagle, diving against Leon, stake in hand aiming for the heart, but the getaway driver easily dodged time after time. Daniel was fast, but Leon, the speed demon, was faster. Leon dropped his shotgun on the floor and drew a knife, brandishing it to Daniel, teasing the detective. Javier rolled on the floor to put out the fire. He stood up and looked furious at Julio, who had a smile and a gun pointed to him. Julio shot twice, but Javier evaded both shots.
You're gonna have to do a lot better.
You overestimate yourself.
Javier pulled out a pair of knives and threw them against Julio, who evaded both of them. When he got his attention back at the Morrigan, the man had rushed supernaturally against him with a third knife in hand, slashing his torso and spilling blood. Julio screamed in pain, but before he could do anything, he felt two piercing knives at his back, and the magician fell to a knee. Javier made the knives dodged by Julio to fly back with his psychic power.
No, I correctly estimated you.
He had an evil smile as he twisted the knife in the magician's gut. He pulled out the knife and was ready to slash it again when a demonic figure wearing the shreds of an expensive suit grabbed him by the neck and slashed his torso with unnatural claws before pulling him around with unholy strength and hitting the ground and ceiling with him.
To make a correct estimate, you need to learn to count first.
Oliver had transformed into a demonic form between man and dragon. His voice sounded unholy, and his skin changed into metallic scales with bluish hue. Smoke came out of his mouth as he spoke, and he delivered 2 more slashes against Javier, causing vicious wounds. Eloise rushed against Stephanie, punching her a couple of times. The basilisk called upon the void and fleshed out a shield of shadows to protect herself against the blows. As Eloise insisted on destroying the shield with brute force, Stephanie again called upon the void and fleshed out a sword of shadows and pierced the Volkos through the gut. Eloise screamed in pain. It felt as if the weapon was corroding and burning her flesh like acid. When Stephanie pulled the sword out, a hissing sound could be heard. Tom and Wade were entangled like 2 giants in a titanic trade of blows. Wade was faster, but Tom was stronger. Wade used the speed of the sea serpent to strike him with a flurry of blows and fall back. Tom blocked them all, but now that they had space between them, Tom was missing his own attacks.
Look at you all slow with that ugly mug. I'm gonna squash you like a bug.
I feel sorry for you.
Wade came in again, striking fast and falling back before Tom could answer the attack.
You have one trick, your strength, and you can't use it anymore. How sad. Your sire did not teach you well. Mine is a master in martial arts.
I don't have a sire.
If I had made such an ugly kid, I would go for a pack of smokes and never come back too. What a dummy.
People always had the bad habit of assuming Tom was dumb. He had been big and strong since he was a kid. He learned that instead of letting his ego get in the way, he could oblige them and use it in his favor. Right now, he realized something. Thanks to the investigation, he knew Wade while his adversary did not know him.
It's a shame what they have done to your dad. It must have been hard for you. I was very close to mine, and when he died, it was very hard for me.
Shut up!
Wade struck him again and again, and Tom spit out a tooth.
Is this why you joined the tower, to avenge your father?
I said shut up! You don't know anything about me!
Lightning blows kept landing on Tom. Jab, cross, hook, jab, jab, cross, sheen, flying knee. Tom could not see them, just felt the body shots to his gut and liver. Punches to the face, but he laughed.
Stop laughing.
Do you even know who really killed him?
Victorio did.
Victorio ordered the hit, but who landed the shiv?
Wade felt the walls closing in on him. In the other room, Leon and Daniel fought in a whirlwind of strikes. Leon would come faster than Daniel, but his eagle senses allowed him to dodge. In return, Daniel would strike with his stake, but Leon was too fast as Father Michael. They kept calling on their blood to fuel their powers, but it was a stalemate. None could garner advantage over the other. Both felt the thirst steadily increasing. Stephanie kept hacking Eloise with her sword, but the Volcos kept enduring the strikes. She just would not be destroyed, as if by sheer will and disdain. The young Navajo warrior kept punching Stephanie repeatedly. Some landed against the shield, but others hit the mark, Stephanie's face.
Why won't you turn to ashes? You're not good enough.
Stephanie screamed in fury and charged with everything she had. Eloise raised her arms in a cross stance over her head, and the sword came down, cutting and corroding halfway her arm. It got stuck, still melting her flesh and bone. Eloise pulled her arm back, taking the sword out of Stephanie's grasp, and the weapon faded away like a shadow under light, as if it never existed.
I hate you. Because you are weak.
Javier was in dire straits fighting against two vampires. He managed to escape the deathly grapple. He was fast and had 3 knives flying around him in a blade tornado created by his psychic powers. He pulled out a 4th knife in his hand. The blades flew around Oliver, cutting him, but he sustained the damage quite well, leaving Julio completely free to sling a spell and rain fire over the Morrigan. Javier protected himself by covering his head with his arms, leaving an opportunity for Oliver to grab him again and hit him against the wall. Julio drew a sword from his cane and pierced the vampire through the heart and left it there, leaving him languid.
You have been measured and found lacking.
On the outside of the building, cars parked and Don Vittorio, Giacomo and his goons exited the vehicles and went straight in. It was time to deliver payback and teach respect. They stormed the building and heard the sounds of combat upstairs. The mobsters started to make their way to it when a gush wind passed by them, from one side to the other.
Come on, boys, let's give them hell.
Vittorio turned to Giacomo and saw the man pale, holding his own throat with fear and sweat dripping from his face. Vittorio started to say something when the gush of wind came back again and again. Someone was attacking them. His goons fell to the ground along with Giacomo, dead.
We meet again, Vito.
Jack?
Oh, I waited 100 years to see that frown on your chubby face, my friend.
How can it be?
Do you mean how could I survive your sordid betrayal when you decided it was good business to hunt my house? After all we've been through? Remember, Vito, blood is thicker than water, especially among our kind.
What happened to you?
You don't like my new look? I grew tired of the whole 19th century gentleman look. It was so 19th century. I think these new aesthetics suit me better.
But Jack, it was just a business, nothing personal. I mean...
My name is Oppenheimer now. Jack was weak. After all, he was almost destroyed by your hands. I mean, the hands of your associates. You never were a hands-on kind of guy, if I may say so.
You did this. The robbery, my stone, the bloodlings.
Yes! It was all me. You should see your face. Revenge is a dish best served cold, I must admit.
Don Vittorio screamed in rage, and with a supernatural speed you would not expect from a short and fat man. He tried to punch Oppenheimer, who dodged the blow. The punch hit a column, splitting it, sending debris through the room. The Morrigan attacked with a knife, but Vittorio parried his enemy's arm to protect himself.
Vito, look at you, having to fight your own battle. Better late than never.
Oppenheimer laughed and unleashed a flurry of blows in a mad frenzy. The Leviathan retreated and parried each time, while waiting for an opening. Suddenly, Vittorio grabbed Oppenheimer's right arm with the strength of 100 men and made his enemy drop the knife. Without letting go, he hit Oppenheimer twice with his other hand.
You always talked too much, Jack, and thought too highly of yourself.
Oppenheimer drew a knife with his offhand. Vittorio prepared to parry the attack, but was caught by surprise when instead of using it to unleash a melee attack against his body, Oppenheimer threw it against his right leg. The knife went deeply into his flesh, just above the knee.
Boom.
Vittorio's eyes went wide. He let go of the Morrigan Nosferatu, but before he could remove the knife, it trembled violently and exploded, taking out his entire leg. Vittorio fell backwards. His pained scream spread through the room along with the echoes of Oppenheimer's laughter. Upstairs, Wade tried to keep it together, but the sea serpent inside him was coiling and raging like the sea as he delivered incessant blows onto Tom. Every time he used his supernatural speed and his ungodly strength, more of the power of his blood was depleted until he started to run out of fuel. When Tom realized his opponent was getting slower, he prepared himself and grabbed Wade by the neck with his huge hands and started to rain down blows on him, each one more devastating than the other. Wade collapsed to his knees, but Tom kept hitting him with all his strength until the man collapsed in a languid state and could fight no more. Eloise, in the other room, smashed Stephanie's shield, who in her turn fleshed out another one. Eloise was starting to get exhausted, but she kept soldiering on. To her relief, the shield finally broke once more. Stephanie tried to call on the void again, but Eloise felt the wolf calling and gave in to the howl inside her. She grabbed Stephanie by the head and smashed her against the wall in a frenzy until her opponent moved no more. Daniel and Leon were still in a stalemate. They stopped and stared at each other. But before any of them could make their next move, Oliver, Julio, Tom, and Eloise joined them.
You are surrounded, Leon. Surrender.
Never, court scum.
He tried to attack Daniel, but the detective dodged. Julio manifested a jetfire, but Leon escaped. Eloise tried to grab him, but could not. Oliver tried to tackle him using his huge body, but missed as well. It was Tom who finally managed to get his hands on Leon right before the speed demon could exit the room. There was no chance in hell that Leon could match Tom's strength to escape.
Daniel, now!
Daniel aimed his stake into Leon's heart and rushed through the room like a bullet, sending the getaway driver into a languid state.
We did it.
A slow clap could be heard from the entrance.
Yes, you did. Congratulations, Midnight Fiends.
Who are you?
That's for me to know, and for you to find out.
He threw Vittorio's hat on the ground, and they all knew what that meant. Vittorio was gone.
Ooh, hello there, Pamela. Long time no see.
Oppenheimer said to Eloise. Something broke down inside her mind, and she fell to one knee holding her head, feeling a lot of pain.
Pamela. I heard this name before. Why is it so familiar?
The boots of dozens of police officers made the building tremble. To the fiends, it was like the cavalry's thunder coming to help them. In this brief moment of distraction, Oppenheimer vanished. They looked around, but he was nowhere to be found. As the Midnight Fiends tended to Eloise, Caroline burst into the room in front of a group of Leviathans.
Provide a situation report.
Caroline said while her troops spread through the building to scout for enemies. Daniel was still worried about Eloise. He could not fathom what was happening with her, but she seemed to be in pain.
We fought a crew of Tower Nosferatu. We defeated them, but one escaped.
Caroline signed with her hands, and DuPont and Father Michael entered the room escorted by a rear guard.
Where is Vittorio?
Julio pointed with his cane to the hat on the ground. All eyes turned to the priest. He was next. Father Michael had a solemn expression on his face, but tried to maintain his composure.
We have the perpetrators in our hands. At least some of them. Maybe the tower won't be able to continue their plan without this crew.
DuPont approached the four languid Nosferatu with a sinister smile.
Don't worry, Michael. We are going to send them to a hole from where they are never going to get out again. If they know anything about the plan of the tower, they are going to tell us all about it.
The Midnight Fiends have done a lot. They look like they need a break.
Agreed. You are relieved, Midnight Fiends. Take care of your wounds and friend. We can take over from here. Don't worry about Vittorio's reward. I'll take it upon myself to pay his dues.
They did not lose any time, and immediately retreated to Oliver's SUV and vanished into the night. Eloise stopped feeling pain, but she was withdrawn and wanted to visit Nayati. They took until the next night to fully recover, but at least they were left alone. When the sun set, Eloise excused herself and went to her mother's dwelling at the reservation territory.
Hello, Jacob. Do you know where Nayati is?
She asked her sire's familiar, who was enjoying a rest by the fire after a day's work while eating his dinner. Jacob promptly took Eloise to a clearing where the elder Navajo Nosferatu was teaching two younger Volkos.
Nayati, I need to speak with you alone.
Nayati sent her two students into a hunt for a beast inside the forest and took Eloise for a walk through the forest trails. Eloise remembered fondly their walks and hunts together, but now she could not take her mind off the matter that troubled her.
Who is Pamela?
Nayati sighed with regret.
We are going to need a long talk, Eloise. I must admit I have not been fully honest with you.
Somewhere else in the city, Oliver and Daniel Reed arrived at a building, and Oliver took his companion to an office inside it. The door read, Eagle Investigations.
Oliver, what is this?
I know you are using the cabin to rest during the day, but it occurred to me that you could use somewhere in the city as a working place. This way you don't need to use the place you call home for work and meetings, and you will find some extra amenities in this office.
I don't know what to say. I must confess I miss my office outside the city, but I cannot accept.
Daniel, I won't take no for an answer. Use it. Leave it closed. It is your prerogative, but I want you to at least have it.
Oliver handed the office keys to Daniel. The detective hesitated, but after a second he smiled and took them.
I am going to pay you back. This must have cost a small fortune.
Of course. We can be partners in this new enterprise until you do so. I have never been part of a private detective agency before.
I can't agree. Actually, I would say you have become a fine detective yourself.
Thank you, Daniel. It means a lot coming from you.
Julio arrived at the library and immediately went to look for his wife, Christina, but she was nowhere to be found. He looked in every room and chamber. Van Arden and his children did not see her leave as well. The woman simply vanished. A chill ran up his spine. The other Nosferatu of House Ashkari checked their wards and no one had invaded the library. He felt his world crumbling and desperation started to set in. He checked every room and every chamber, calling her name. He started to become frustrated and suddenly he was surprised by the sound of a clock hitting the next hour. In anger, he punched the clock several times and threw it on the floor, completely destroying it. He broke down and fell to his knees, blood tears streaking his face as his screams calling her name cut through the night. Tom was alone in the cabin in the woods when someone knocked on the door. Strange, he did not expect anyone here. He cautiously approached the door and opened it. It was the White Ronin and the Goblin. In his mansion, Oliver finished showering, and when he came out of the bathroom there was something bizarre waiting for him. Another trade card rested on his nightstand. He took it incredulously. He looked around his bedroom, but nothing else was out of place. He felt apprehension. Since he used the demon form, he had been feeling something inside him awakened. Something strange. He feared it was the dragon. Immediately he felt short of breath. How is it possible? He was dead. He didn't even need to breathe. He tried to escape his own thoughts and returned his attention to the card on his hands. He examined it. This one had a number on the back. Would he have the courage to call? Daniel arrived at the Church of All Sins Redeemed. He left his car and took a box of his stuff in his hands. He spent a lot of time thinking about it, but he decided he would finally move in with Father Michael. He was worried about his sire. Michael could be targeted by the tower and destroyed. Daniel Reed hoped that with the bloodlings out of the job, maybe it could be averted, but the detective felt he should be there now that his sire had a target on his back. He entered the church by the back entrance he always used when visiting. When inside, the detective heard something, noises. Daniel left his box on a table and took out his stake. He silently turned a corner in the church when he heard chuckles. It was Michael and Betty kissing, and before he could leave, he saw the priest sinking his fangs on her neck. The detective felt dizzy. Disgust burned inside him, and for a second he felt like he could jump onto his sire with a stake in hands, but he returned it to his jacket. He took his box and turned back. He left without saying a single word to Father Michael, heading back to the cabin in the woods.